So great. Yeah, so basically the whole idea of this is hopefully to kind of have a bit of a discussion, a bit of a conversation. If you're here and you're not one of the panelists, please do feel free to kind of let us know if you've got any questions you want to ask, and we'd love for you to come off mute to ask the question yourself. But yeah, I mean, so look, what question do we want to kind of start off with outside of like who you are, which we've already done?
Yeah, it's a good point. We asked for questions in advance of the event, and one of the questions that came through asked about what motivated you to contribute more to the Ohana or to the ecosystem. So what, we potentially all have day jobs at this point. A lot of the people have mentioned about a lot of the voluntary activities that go above and beyond that. I think in all of the cases you've exceeded that well beyond. What were some of the, and this is an open question to all of the panelists, but what were some of your motivations? You've touched on some of them, but what drove you to put in the extra hours and the time and things like that?
Well, I'll jump in if nobody wants to go first. I think the biggest thing for me that drives me forward and keeps me contributing and doing things for other people within the community is realizing where I got my start in this community and where my career has gone since I've been involved in the community. And I think most of the roles that I've gotten have been through connections I've built in the community and through people I know, rather than just simply randomly going out and applying for a job. So I think the connections you can make with people, get to know them really well, spend a lot of time with them, are super important. Besides running Midwest Raymond and a local user group here in my city, I also do a lot of mentorship. I've done some with the official Trailhead Trailblazer mentorship program, but I've done a ton of it outside of that as well. Unless you're one of my children, I tend to not say no if somebody says, "Hey, Eric, can you spare a few minutes, or can you help me with something, or can I ask you a couple of questions?" So it's a regular occurrence for me to be on a Zoom call or a Google Meet or a phone call or whatever with somebody I know only through the community that have never met face to face, and they're facing a challenge, they're curious about a career move or whatever, and I'm super excited and happy to talk through any of that kind of stuff with people. Just because I feel like the community has given me this great career and really supported me and my family with tons of fun and a job that I love, and certainly enough money to support my lifestyle the way I want it to be. So I guess that's my answer on that question.
Nice. So paying it forward. It's a good, good theme of that.
Yeah, I would say that mine's kind of similar to Eric. When I was starting out in the community, a lot of people kind of helped bring me up behind them. So like the first Dreamforce, I met David Liu, and he talked about his website and tips for how to get certified. And so I got certified, and I just emailed him, "Hey, thank you for all the help." And he responded back, and he posted about me on his blog, and a bunch of people started trying to connect with me. Like, he didn't have to do that. That was just a nice thing for him to do. And then one of these connections I made asked me, "Hey, can you help me get certified?" And I was like, well, some people in the community help me. Let me go help this person. So I helped them get certified. And a couple months later, they messaged me again, "Hey, I applied for this job. I'm not qualified, but you might be." And so that was my first full-time Salesforce developer job in the ecosystem. And I was moving out from Arizona to the Bay Area. And if you're not aware, housing out in the Bay Area is a little bit crazy. And I was moving in like 2 weeks. And so I was having a hard time finding a roommate on Craigslist. And I messaged this guy again. I was like, "Hey, do you happen to know anyone in the Bay Area looking for a roommate?" And so he said, "Yeah, sure. This guy I was in the military with looking for someone." And so he helped find me a job, helped find me a roommate, all because I helped him get certified. And so people like that kind of helping me grow my career have really kind of just shown that, how great this community really is, and really continue to inspire me to give back and help grow the community and bring people up behind me, and hopefully they can get to the same place that I am and even farther. So, it's great being a part of the community. Everyone kind of has a shared communal desire to give back and help others, and I love being a part of that.
I think for me, it started off as wanting to give back. As several of us have said, there's been so many people that have helped us on our journey in things like the Answers community. So it was all about just giving back. And then I think I started to realize how many people needed help and how many people found it really difficult to transition into technology, into Salesforce. And I realized that other people felt like I did. They felt like a bit of an imposter. They felt really nervous when they went to events. And the bigger my platform got to connect with people, I think the more responsibility I feel to put out things that are useful and keep helping people. And I think the other thing is that admins are trainers, right? We're teachers. I think we love to do it. It's such a big part of our role. So I love to help other people, love to teach other people. And it gives me a lot of pleasure when I know that it's helped someone else. You know, they've redone their CV, they've got an interview, they've got a job, they've passed their certification, because I get how hard it is. I've been that person that struggled, that hasn't done that certification for years because I was too nervous, because I didn't think I knew what I was doing. And you can really help people quite easily just by being there for them and giving them a little bit of guidance. And this is a family. I know that sounds really cheesy, but you know, the Salesforce community is like one giant family where everybody really cares about each other. So it's good to just keep giving and keep growing it and make sure that we bring everybody along for the journey, because that's what I think most of us want, is we want everyone else to be able to join us and be successful and make it as easy as possible as well.
Yeah, I echo a lot of what's been said. I would say that personally, I was very active locally. I mean, I probably did about 10 hours a week pro bono with my user group, helping with builds, helping my members, and wasn't vocal about it, just kind of did my thing. I'm an extreme introvert. I had PTSD for a number of years, and my user group was, like you said, my family. But the larger Salesforce ecosystem, especially outside of nonprofits, I was very skeptical, to be honest. I was like, you know, this is a for-profit company. Are there really this many altruistic people in like a corporate tech you know, community? Very skeptical and just cautious, I think. And a lot of that came from, I wasn't able to attend in-person events because I didn't have the budget or employers who could fund it, right? So I didn't get to experience that in-person magic and that trust that you build with those in-person relationships or smaller conversations like this, because I was such an introvert. So one of the things that I think really inspired me to give back beyond locally and in my like micro introvert way was the Women in Tech user groups. Our Women in Tech group in DC, which started after the group that I lead, led by Leandria and Rakia right now, and Toya, and they're just all sorts of amazing MVPs, getting out and engaging with them and really gaining a voice and confidence, and really seeing, oh, wow, if I can translate my values and connect with others who want to especially see more diversity in tech and see tech as a vehicle for folks to gain more, you know, economic and social power. I was like, you know, there are things that I can do with my grassroots organizing and nonprofit-y background and translate making the Salesforce jobs and Salesforce ecosystem possibly more accessible. So that's what really motivated me. I said, okay, you know, I can translate or, you know, turn my skepticism into a journey that could be really impactful potentially. So that's what motivated me to do more and to engage more outside of my little bubble. And I'm really, really glad I did. And because it sounds like a lot of Kool-Aid. Salesforce is like one of the best marketing engines out there, which I totally respect. But yeah, it's the community is what makes the product so great, in my opinion. So it's just been fantastic.
So I had one last thing. I think mine, which I think some of the Brits or maybe even the Northerners might appreciate, but I'm sure this reflects all around the world, or at least outside the big cities, is my regional whinge that probably started about a decade ago. Probably started many years before that, I don't know, but at least in the UK there was the London community. that was it. I think the Scotland. I think there was an occasional event in Scotland. I think the Bristol guys might have started, but London at that point had even stopped doing events, and when they did, they were run by Salesforce, so they weren't really community events. And Ben, you might remember this, but I think we were at an event again. It probably is 10 years or so ago, and I was whinging and complaining, saying, why is there nothing in Manchester? Why is there nothing outside of London? And somebody had said, you're always whinging about this. Why don't you just set it up? And put me in touch with people at people at Salesforce and said, this guy wants to set it up. And probably within 24 hours, I had access to my new community login, which at the time I think was appropriately called we didn't call it Manchester. I think it was the north of Watford, south of Edinburgh user group, something like that. I think there's less of those gaps now, that which is fantastic. And again, several of us on this call will know this well. But I think that was one of the things that motivated me, was just to really spread that knowledge and community outside of a handful of big cities. But probably we need it more. It's quite easy if you're in London, San Francisco, Chicago. Some big cities will have just lots of people. So they'll have lots of naturally communities and all the events, but still, people from Newcastle, from Manchester, will be traveling down to London for events, traveling to. So yeah, I think that was a key thing to me and still keep digging my heels in and refusing to move to London.
Nice.
Great. I think there's a point that's come up on a couple of the responses so far, which is sort of like one of those kind of ones where you sometimes when you're done an event, you might go, do I bring this up? But it's the point of where do you think the MVP's place fits if the community doesn't agree with something coming out of Salesforce? Or is that too controversial to ask on a recording?
Well,
I'll start, or you go ahead, Eric.
No, it's all yours, Charisse. Take it.
Switch it off.
No, they're used to it. They're used to it from me. Salesforce likes to promote that they're kind of a customer first company, and when they're reminded of that, I feel like many times they really do take customer and community concerns into consideration and will engage in dialogue, right? And like, to their credit, they've grown really quickly, and I think MVPs, I can only speak for myself, but as an MVP and just as a community leader prior, when I began to kind of come into my own confidence and realize that, wow, folks expected me to speak on their behalf when they weren't comfortable, especially when it comes to concerns around account executives or any of the list that exists, that just being an advocate for community and customers is an MVP or just a community leader role that I take very seriously, and don't shy away from. I'm no longer an introvert when I go into advocate or like mama bear mode, especially when it's on behalf of nonprofits, right? And so I think that's kind of a key role that we play. Salesforce tends to know that most of the MVPs, I'm sure all of them, just have interacted with potentially hundreds of customers, and know the ecosystem and products very well. So there's trust on both sides. So we're kind of hopefully a bridge to help smooth things out, or help the corporation come to terms with things that may be uncomfortable, but will hopefully improve the product and just improve everything overall once the uncomfortable part is sorted out.
I think that's so true. And I think, you know, as MVPs, the idea is that we're product experts that give advice and support to the community. So that's our role here, is to help people learn Salesforce, you know, get into the ecosystem, have a great career, and we can do all of that. And I would always say to people, if they do have any issues, then they can 100% talk to Salesforce. And the ways that they can talk to Salesforce, I'm currently on something called the Credentials Security Council, where we talk about Salesforce credentials and the security around them. And so I can say with 100% that they've been absolutely open to feedback and some criticism, some support. And the other thing is that, you know, I have conversations directly with product managers as well, where I raise questions with them. Why doesn't it do this yet? What about this? Why hasn't this happened? And they're always really, really open to receiving that feedback, and normally very honest as well about why certain things can't be rolled out any sooner because of, you know, limitations, resource, roadmap. There are, you know, there tend to be good reasons behind it. So I think Salesforce are very approachable to talk to about things. And again, you know, anyone that's uncomfortable or unsure that they can do that should definitely reach out to an MVP who can advise them on the best way to go about it.
And I think I'd probably take that one step further and go beyond just product knowledge, but just sheer ecosystem connections and knowledge about who knows what. And helping others find the right people to get those answers. And in some cases that means asking those hard questions, sometimes, like you said, to the product managers, or in some cases to the team that runs the community at Salesforce. Why are we treating this group in such a way, or why are certain things the way they are? I mean, for those who kind of know me pretty well, I'm your stereotypical old white guy in technology, but I am all about supporting and lifting up the ones in the underrepresented communities and the women in technology, and helping everyone get their fair shake at a great career and a great life. So and I think, generally speaking, I think MVPs are probably some of the most vocal people in the community as well. They're not afraid to speak their mind, and people tend to just listen because we have that MVP title.
Yeah, I think kind of building on what everyone said, I you know, Salesforce talks about us all being one Ohana and one family. And, you know, the way I think about being an MVP is publicly, I'm more than happy to promote Salesforce and drink the Kool-Aid, but behind closed doors, when I'm talking to product managers or executives, if I have a complaint, I'm going to make sure they know what it is. If I've heard complaints from other people in the community, I'm going to make sure that information is passed on. And we're fortunate that sometimes we have more access to some of these people than others in the community. And I feel it's kind of our responsibility to make sure that if there are concerns, they are definitely brought to the attention of Salesforce. And like Sherry said, and Christine also, they're usually very willing to listen. Sometimes they make the changes we want to see, sometimes not as much. But the fact that they are listening and willing to take our feedback, I think is one of the big parts about being an MVP for sure.
And just maybe just tipping like just a thought from someone who's not an MVP in this group, but just on some bits we're seeing on here. One thing I sometimes see in the community is lots of complaints, and that you know, a lot of them can be quite valid. But as someone who can be who has had conversation with some of the product managers as well, I would imagine that for MVPs, it puts you into a bit of a better position to actually maybe go back and give answers to the community when they're kind of going about some of these complaints. Like an example I've got in my head was I've tried to keep my ear very much to the ground with dynamic forms and actions and that kind of side of things in the recent year, since it's being worked on and since it came out last year. And I often hear people coming to me asking questions, going like, "Why do you know why it's not available for standard objects yet?" And after I had a conversation with Brinkle early in the year, I go, "Yes, I know that answer. Here's your answer," because I was on a call with him. But I imagine for MVPs, you kind of get a bit of that as part of what you do. So you imagine it's quite easy to kind of go back to people in the community who are having those kind of challenges, or going, "Why isn't this feature here yet?" And going, "Actually, here's what Salesforce have said.
I actually think it's less about being an MVP here. I mean, I've spoken to Brinkle myself for the article that I wrote on dynamic forms, but I did it because I wanted it to be 100% accurate, and I felt like the information out there wasn't clear enough, and I wasn't happy to put anything out that wasn't going to be 100% accurate. So I just sent him a message on the community to say, will you have a chat with me? And he said yes. And I think this MVP thing is sometimes a bit funny. I think it was Steve Moe that once said, you know, he's this long-time Salesforce MVP, an absolute rock star to our community. And he's like, when I go to work, nobody cares. They don't know what it is. It means nothing to them. It's just like that. And I think the same a little bit with Salesforce. You know, the Salesforce MVP is definitely, it's a community thing very much. I'm not sure Salesforce employees recognize it as much as our community does. So I like to think that some of the product managers would, you know, they would talk to anyone that reached out to ask them about it.
Yeah, I've got a question actually. So obviously, how does Salesforce help you to develop as an MVP? So you've got the title, you're doing all sorts of altruistic things off your own back, which you can tell that you evidently buy into, and you know is not for the purpose. But for someone that's been an MVP for a year versus 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, and beyond, is there any like a development program, or is there anything to help? Are you mentored with other MVPs? How does it work once you've got the title? Just looking behind the scenes, how do you guys keep developing?
I think a lot of it, like some of us have said, you know, whether we have the title or not, a lot of the stuff we're doing, we're still going to keep doing. So that doesn't necessarily change. I think there is an internal MVP mentorship program now. So like the new MVP is one of the new ones, was assigned me as a mentor. So I'm kind of helping him maybe meet people or let him know what's, you know, kind of worked for me in the past. In a lot of ways, I feel like sometimes there's even more pressure to contribute because, oh, they told me I was an MVP, now I have to prove it, sort of thing. Yeah. From a personal development standpoint, one of the perks we get is free certifications. So that's kind of a nice way to, maybe if there's something we were thinking about, might be another incentive to branch out. I think they're free. The classes they offer also, I think, are free or discounted as well. So also another kind of benefit to help us personally develop. Nice. Beyond that, I don't know if there's anything else really specific from a personal perspective, though. But those are probably the biggest ones.
Thank you.
I find this very interesting because I might be one of the newest MVPs on the panel, so I've only had it for 2 years. And just like Adam said, I to be honest, I don't really know what I'm supposed to do, but I'm just doing what I was doing before. Like for me, nothing has changed. I was doing it because I wanted to. I'm still doing all the things I want to do. I get more opportunities now that I'm an MVP. More people come to me, so that's nice. But you know, in terms of how it continues, I guess we just have to hope that, you know, we're still doing enough for the community. I know that everyone on this panel would only ever want to keep it as long as they were doing enough and giving back enough. So yeah, we'll see if it keeps going.
I've been an MVP since 2013, so quite a while now. And in 2020, they gave me the Hall of Fame title, which I used to joke about and kind of refer to that as being put out to pasture. And then they gave it the title to me, and I realized that it's really more of a lifetime achievement award than a retirement, if you will. But I think, wow, I just lost my train of thought there for a second. Let me think. There was a program a few years back where MVPs who felt like they maybe weren't contributing enough could ask the community team to set them up with some other MVPs to give them some constructive criticism and some feedback. I don't know if that's really still active or not, but for me, I never thought about it that way. I mean, I never said, somebody tell me I'm doing a good job. I just kept doing what I was doing and never really cared about it. I remember specifically having a conversation with one of the members of the community team that was in charge of the MVP program a while back. And I said, people ask me for feedback about them as an MVP all the time, and I'm happy to do it. And I'm brutally honest with them too. I tell them the good, the bad, and the ugly, because that's what they need to hear, maybe not what they want to hear. So, but personally, I've never felt like I needed that kind of feedback loop. I've always just thought, I'm just going to do what I do. And if I keep the MVP title, great. If I don't, as Adam said a little bit ago, it's not going to change what I'm doing. I'm still going to go do it all. And for me, it's more the personal warm fuzzies, I suppose you could say, about running into somebody at an event and he says, hey, you're the guy who started Midwest Dream and I learned XYZ in this year and it changed my career. So thank you. And one of those thank yous for me is all I need to keep doing that all year long. So.
Yeah, I think I might be the newest MVP, just my first year. It's totally unexpected. So I got it. I was like, oh, it made me nervous because, you know, I was honored, but at the same time, I was like, okay, you know, I feel like I need to meet a higher standard now. I don't know. I've just always had MVPs on this really high pedestal. So I was like, that's not me. And I think that, you know, there's a Slack community that's been great. I've really appreciated that. And they have been assigned a mentor. So that's been great as well. I think I personally, you know, as others have said, I'm going to do what I do regardless of if I'm an MVP. And I'd actually, you know, one of my goals is to see more diversity in the Salesforce community. So I'm hoping as a white woman that I, you know, get replaced, or, you know, I don't know if it's like, I don't really know much about the MVP program. I didn't even know really until last year, like, or remember that it happens at a certain time every year. I just remembered filling out the form and nominating people. It wasn't like on my calendar, even like in something I registered. So, you know, one of my focuses is to just be continuing to mentor folks and see more diversity, especially in the MVP community, so that folks coming into the ecosystem see more representation, right? When they look at the MVP community and they say, oh, I can do this, like I can get to where I want to go. And I think that would be great. So yeah, I just, it's an MVP community is insanely amazing. It's like a concentrated version of all the good things in the Salesforce ecosystem. So it's been such an immense privilege, as has been mentioned before, to just have access to have closer access to that network for someone like me who's an introvert and really just didn't feel comfortable doing what I encourage everyone. So everyone on this call, if you hear something that one of us says, or one of our backgrounds seems similar, might be helpful to you, or you see us post something on social, like connect, reach out. For years, I was just too shy to reach out to anybody. And, you know, the MVPs especially are just kind of programmed to be helpful and, you know, not judge, or, you know, if you aren't understanding something, it's totally fine. We all started at the beginning. So don't hesitate to reach out.
Yeah, I think to put that in slightly different words, whether you view the MVPs as sitting up on a pedestal or not, they're just as human as you are. We all make mistakes too. We all screw things up in a Salesforce org once in a while. So, you know, we've been through what you're going through more than likely at some point. From a little historical perspective, since I think I'm the longest running MVP out of this crew, the MVP program initially, back when I got into it, they initiated a new class of MVPs 3 times a year, just like the release schedule. There was a spring class of MVPs and a summer class of MVPs and a winter class. That at some point transitioned to twice a year, like at Dreamforce and 6 months away from Dreamforce. And probably about 3 or 4 years ago, then they switched that to a once a year class of MVPs. And I think that may have realistically just been a workload issue for the community team, because they put a ton of work into gathering all the voting and the feedback from the community and things like that. And then they turn around and give all the nominations. The process, the way that happens is Salesforce gathers all those nominations and consolidates it all and shares it with the existing MVPs and says, okay, now MVPs, tell us what you know about these individuals and what you think about them, but only do it if you've really had interactions with them. Don't read the nominations and base your comments on what other people said. Tell us what your own personal experience has been with these individuals and whether they meet the MVP criteria in your opinion. So the MVPs, I guess you could say, kind of get the privilege of helping to guide the direction of the program a little, and who maybe come into the program as a new MVP?
Great, thanks. And one of the points that you kind of brought up there, Eric, was one of the things I wanted to come back to at some point in the panel, which is the whole subject of kind of like imposter syndrome. You know, I think all of us in the community at some point or other go through it and kind of deal with it. But I thought it'd be good to kind of maybe talk about that, kind of like what kind of like how do you think that fits within MVPs, or how do you kind of would you combat that? Because as I mentioned there, to quite a few people outside of the MVP program, they might see the MVPs as like kind of these really amazing people sitting very, very high on pedestals. But
Do you guys get it?
Yeah, but
do you
know,
guys experience it?
Yeah. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I mean, and there are multiple roads to becoming an MVP. There are multiple paths that people end up taking in their career. I mean, just the diversity of this group right now that are the panelists here. I mean, Charisse has been, as she put it, long-time grassroots nonprofit efforts. Christine's been an amazing admin, pretty much a long time. Adam started down the developer path. I very openly admit I have 0 certifications. For a while, I may have been one of the few MVPs that had 0 certifications. I think Steve Moe actually had 0 for a while, even with all of his knowledge and the millions of answers he's provided to the community. I still have 0. I've failed the admin exam 3 times. I'm not ashamed to say that. I have never been a Salesforce administrator, so I didn't do that stuff day to day. But I think we each individual MVP brings something unique to this community. For me, it's the ability to connect people to people. Some of you probably have seen my blog series from a few years ago and realize that I gave myself the title, the Kevin Bacon of the community, of the Salesforce community, because people come to me, say, hey, Eric, do you know somebody that knows something about a specific topic? And it's like, oh yeah, go to this person. I mean, it's like, I may not know all the answers, but I'm connected to all the answers in some way. That's my superpower, I suppose you could say. But everybody that's an MVP has their own unique trait that they bring in that adds value to this community.
I think having imposter syndrome is really common. And one of the things I always wanted to do long before I was an MVP was be really honest with people about how I coped with things, how I did things, because I remember when I first started out in the community and everybody just seemed to do it so effortlessly. You know, these talks, they seemed so perfect. They knew what they were talking about. And the idea of getting up there, standing in front of people talking, and then actually answering questions at the end of a session was terrifying. So I've always tried to be really honest about how scary I find it. I'm also quite an introvert that's learnt how to be extroverted and to get up and talk. Walk into a room is really scary. And I just think it helps for other people to know, because I don't want people to look at me now and think, oh, it's so easy. It's always been easy, because it's not. It's taken a lot of hard work. And the thing I always do is if someone asks me to do something or I want to do something, I just go ahead. I submit the talk, I write the blog, and just learn how to do it afterwards, because everything gets easier. Going to an event gets easier. Every time you walk into the room, you know more people. Every time you feel more comfortable getting up on that stage and, you know, doing another session. So it's just practice and getting over those nerves. But I think everybody feels the same in the beginning. So, you know, I just want other people to know it is hard, and it's hard for all of us.
And it's very common. Realistically, I mean, I've been a Dreamforce speaker since 2014. Over the years, I've probably given 15 to 20 different talks across all those Dreamforce years. And I get a little nervous every single time, no matter how much I've rehearsed the session. And when people want to submit sessions to Midwest Dream, and they always come to me saying, what's it take to get a session accepted? So I don't vote on the Midwest Dreaming sessions. I leave that to the rest of the committee, because I'm often giving advice to people on how to write an abstract, how to develop an idea and get your point across in 240 words that you're going to see as a session description. But I remember very clearly that very first time that I stood on stage to speak, I was nervous as heck. I was sweating bullets. My stomach was turning somersaults. And as soon as I started to talk on that session and looked out in the audience and realized those people came to hear what I wanted to say, they were there because they chose it. Suddenly that calmed the nerves quite a bit. But now I have a first time thing happening for me next week. I'm going to Tahoe Dreaming. I'm actually doing a keynote at Tahoe Dreaming. I've never done a keynote before. It's a session that I've done many, many times over with Nana Gregg. She and I are sharing the keynote next week at Tahoe Dreaming. But I'm super nervous about it already, just because it's labeled a keynote. I've never done that, so it's scary. Yeah, it's like I said a little bit ago, everybody's human, and we all have some trait that something that just strikes fear in our hearts. And public speaking is still one for me, even though I've done it many, many times.
Well done. You'll be great, Eric.
Actually, it's going to be live streamed too.
There we
so
go.
Who knows how many millions of people
honest.
are going to watch it, and there go my nerves again.
Don't think about it. I think it's very true. But it's lots of people have raised that about sort of being introverts, and I think the more that people can speak about that and say, yeah, we're all shy. We all generally, we'll put on some sort of face, some sort of show. The sort of click, right? Okay, I've got to do this now. I've got to be the group leader. I've got to be the speaker. I've got to be something. You got to click and do something. And it's it can be awful. Yeah, you can feel terrible for it. And like I said, the sweat's going, and it's not nice to to feel that. But then you do it, and maybe the second time sweat slightly less, or the third time you feel a little bit more confident. And but yeah, those stories are often aren't told, of how bad the first events were, and how you did it wrong, and how you your slides are upside down, and whatever it would be. But it's important that people hear about that, because that's how you improve.
Yeah, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with saying, I don't know the answer to your question, but let me try to help you find out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's the end of all of my sessions, is taking everybody's emails and just promising that I will be emailing back within 24 hours of a better answer than I've just fumbled through of trying to get something. But yeah, nobody. One thing I've definitely learned is nobody in the ecosystem, nobody is the expert on everything. And if they pretend they are, they're probably either Parker Harris, or they're lying because they've never done a day's work in their life, and they're just have studied everything and never actually done any actual work. So we only have our little bits, and we do try and do those as best we can do.
I think
I'd love to hear. Oh, go ahead, Luke.
I was just going to say, it's nice, I think, from all of the answers to the opposite of imposter syndrome. I think from every answer, it's about being authentic and about being values driven. So it's interesting. It seems like they do those things, worry less about the imposter. I think it's there in all of us. Of course, I definitely have it and experience it at times, but I think it's good to see that come through from all the answers. And I think even looking at the community, to be honest, across, one of the first events that I spoke at, I was on a panel, and Eric was the facilitator. It's out there. Christine, watched you for a couple of years. As we've developed, Mark was massively fangirling hard when you sorry, Mark, don't mean to embarrass you. When you connected, he was buzzing to there. Phil, when we first got into the user group, was a massive help with starting us. We did our third shared Northern group event, which, if you listen to Phil's story about being represented in Manchester, was even better when it was Manchester, Sheffield, Newcastle, etc. So I think even in a short time, 2 years into running the group with Mark, it's cool because in some way, I'm either connected to you, I know you from experience, or I know you from Twitter. Like, you know what I mean? It's good.
Yeah, I think I'm guessing, and I'd love to hear from folks who joined the session, kind of why you joined. My assumption is that you maybe wanted to hear a bit about and maybe get ideas and inspiration for taking your career to the next level, or maybe trying to navigate where in the Salesforce ecosystem is a good fit for you. And if that's the case, I think one of the themes that we've been mentioning is that beyond the technical piece, that if you want to strive for more senior roles, regardless of the type of company or if it's consulting or if your in-house roles, developer, admin, building those leadership skills and community focus skills can happen in ways that even if you're an introvert are possible, right? And so get a mentor if you're feeling stuck or not appreciated or not recognized for your work. Get a mentor to help you focus on really sharing what you're doing. And you can practice that internally at your company, but also externally, depending or some combination. And that can be a huge changer, right? And that's the kind of toxic tech cultures that are often talked about these days, especially with the focus on like diversity, equity, and inclusion. Like a lot of the times in the past, the narcissists are the ones who've been promoted, right? Or extreme extroverts. If you have two people who do the same work, but maybe one communicates about it differently and gets noticed and gets promoted. So these are all like questions that, even though a lot of us can be a bit more technical focused and just want to do our more technical roles, if you do want to go for more senior work and roles in the ecosystem, that's often, or if you want to go off and be a freelancer and get great referrals and not have to worry as much about your sales pipeline, those leadership and community skills are key. So definitely encourage, going out and seeking a mentor if you're looking to kind of focus on that non-technical development as well.
Yeah, and I think it's safe to say if you don't know who to reach out to about becoming a mentor, about finding a mentor, I think all of us MVPs on this call would be happy to help direct you to someone who would be appropriate for your own unique situation.
Great. Yeah, I think mentorship is so key, and it's really, really helpful. Although I technically don't have an official mentor, I do have a couple of people who are kind of unofficially mentors, who you just hop on a WhatsApp call, have a bit of a talk to, sometimes even a bit of a vent to, and you can find that those can really be good springboards. So before I got the call for the role at Galacticos, it was through a conversation with one of my mentors, or just had a bit of a vent about my previous job. I mean, good organization, but I was getting a bit frustrated because I was almost stagnant a little bit. I was like, I can't really grow any further in this current role. And I was just venting, having a bit of a rant, and he turned around and goes, "It's probably about time you look for a new job." And that was the catalyst to kind of start putting my name out there. So mentors are so valuable as well. Kind of looking through, I don't see any questions in the chat, but if anybody does have any questions, please feel free to let us know, unmute yourself, raise your hand, what have you. We do have a little bit of time left, but we also so would love to hear your questions coming through as well. I suppose, well, if people are still thinking, I guess a good question could possibly be, and we've sort of already touched on it a little bit, but kind of like, if somebody was, say, coming in new to the community, didn't really know anything about the community, or just goes, I've just heard about this thing called the Trailblazer Community. How do I get involved? What do I do? What kind of advice would you give to them?
So I think for me, I kind of started in doing two things. One, just attending my local user group meetings. So like I said, I lived in Phoenix, Arizona, and there were at the time 5 or 6 people that came to our meetings. But again, 5 or 6 people, very easy to talk to everybody and connect with them. So the group's grown a lot since then, but if you have a local user group, I'd recommend doing that. And the other thing I did was just getting Trailhead badges and tweeting about them. And eventually somebody would be like, oh, hey, I got that badge too. That's pretty cool. Or maybe it was a more challenging badge and somebody got stuck on it. And so just kind of being active on Twitter, meeting people through Twitter, talking about Salesforce. And then I see them at an event and, oh, hey, I kind of know you. And so that's also a way to help start forming relationships. So those are probably the two things I'd recommend: trying to attend local user groups and events if you can, and then just do some learning and try to connect with people either on Twitter through the Trailblazer community groups, things like that.
Nice. So shout out to Kieran and Andreas for joining the local. I think it's the first time we've had you guys at the user group, but good to have you both with us.
Yeah, it's nice to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, nice to be here.
And I see, Trace, you've put in the chat there, 100% get on Twitter.
Yes, a good portion of the nonprofit community that I interact with, they're not on Twitter. I mean, most of them are just so overworked. It's consultants and like people in the Salesforce ecosystem are overworked, but there's more of a culture of like hanging out on Twitter. It's like the water cooler, right? And that's less so in the nonprofit community, you know, as a generalization. And anyone looking to network, get a new job, learn more, make connections, find pro bono volunteers. The fastest way, any nonprofit that comes to me saying, I need help, especially if it's from a developer or something technical, and that's discreet, they always get hooked up on Twitter. Always, because that's where they're hanging out, right? So I just suggest, like, yeah, Twitter's great. And obviously the Trailblazer community as well, you know, but yeah, just those social platforms can be fantastic.
Great. Yeah, Twitter's a fantastic resource for sure to kind of get to know people and just to talk things through. So I think, is there anything kind of like, we're just kind of looking at the time, I think kind of like as well, might be kind of gradually getting to a point where it's a bit of a natural wrap up, but I guess kind of one final thing I guess we could put out there is kind of like, is there anything that you'd like to say as we're kind of closing, any kind of like encouragement or something that's kind of like in your mind that we haven't talked about that you might want to raise before we wrap things up?
I would just say, you know, like a lot of us have said, a lot of us suffer from imposter syndrome as well. So definitely believe in yourself. You know, you all have unique experiences and things that you know about that somebody else probably doesn't. You know, like I said, in my second Dreamforce, I was encouraged to present and 2 of my talks got accepted. I didn't think I was deserving of presenting a Dreamforce, but Salesforce thought otherwise. So don't be afraid to present what you know, whether it's a Dreamforce, a local conference, a user group. There are definitely people who can learn from your experience and expertise. And so don't let a title or a lack of a title be an obstacle to sharing your knowledge with the community, because it's definitely welcome and someone can benefit from it.
Yeah, I'll toss a little bit more onto that same thought.
The other one had too much
And
vanilla.
kind of what Adam was just
They all
talking
have
about
vanilla.
earlier about writing a blog, or maybe it was Phil who talked about writing a blog just to share some information with coworkers or something. I started a blog probably like 10 years ago by now, maybe. And originally my thought process was, I want to write some notes down about things I'm learning and put them in a place where I'm not going to lose the piece of paper or not going to forget it or where I put it. And I figured storing it on a blog site on the internet was a safe place because the internet lives forever. And then I thought, well, you know what, I wrote this thing. I kind of put it down in a story format. So I'm just going to share it and see what happens. And people started reading it. I mean, it's, you never know what thoughts are in your own mind that might help someone else until you put it down on virtual paper or real paper and put it out there and let people know that it's there. One of the talks that I give fairly often is about building a personal brand. And the first thing that I tell people always is, don't be afraid to put yourself out there in whatever manner is you most comfortable to you. Charisse mentioned Twitter. That's one of the things that I always go to is get out on Twitter. You don't have to say anything. Just get out there and listen. observe people, listen to conversations, and without thinking about it, you're going to start responding. You're going to start joining those conversations and engaging with other people. And then suddenly you're going to realize, I've got 1,000 Twitter followers now. How'd that happen? And it'll just keep growing and growing. So yeah, all it takes to get started with any of that is one little step, and that's not so scary.
I really agree with what both of you have just said. And just as a slightly different point, I would say that, if you see us at events, don't put us on any kind of pedestal and shy away and hide. Come up to us, come and meet us, say hello, because I would always want to be that person. If you go to an event and you're alone and you don't know who to talk to and you see me there, come and join me. Let me be that person. Let me introduce you to all of the people that I know now and make that transition into the community easier. I want to meet everyone and help other people make connections.
Emma just put it in the chat about getting selfies. That's a great way to meet people too. Find someone at an event that you wanted to meet and take a selfie and put it out there in social somewhere and share that with the rest of the community.
And a shameless plug for one of the nonprofit Salesforce community events that's actually happening now and happens every couple of months, the open source common sprint with salesforce.org. It's creating open source packages for nonprofit use on Salesforce, and a lot of the open source projects have been adopted and supported and enhanced by Salesforce.org engineers. So it's like a hybrid now, and it's really great. So anybody with zero Salesforce experience to like the top experts can come in and jump into one of the 14, we've got between 14 and 22 projects at every sprint. We usually have a minimum of 100 people on our virtual. Sometimes it can go up to 250. And it's so much fun and it's super flexible and enjoyable. So you can ping a project leader and say, hey, I'm an awesome expert. Like, what hour should I come in and help with and what can I help with? Or you can just hang out and butterfly and go around and meet people. Or as a newbie, you can just say, hey, I'm new, I have no idea what I'm doing. Where would be a good place for me to start? So there's been a lot of conversation over like, to get experience, don't necessarily do that at the expense of a nonprofit organization, right? Because you could create harm if you don't have a mentor guiding you or a team. So the open source sprints are the place to go. Awesome community, you meet people. It's a really safe space. We had one of the teams, like my background is the DEI team. And it's our role as a sprint project to make sure that everybody feels included and has an opportunity to contribute. So it's fantastic. It's so much fun.
Therese, in the true spirit of meeting people, for the first time and collaborating, could I pick your brains and would you be do a guest blog on my next post so I can put that on and spread it to the world?
Yes, I would love that.
And everybody else is very welcome to, because I do this every week and I run out of ideas a lot, but that sounds like a great one. It's exciting. And apart from that, I was going to say my parting comment was going to be just it's great to see people and great to meet internationally as well at events like this as well as locally. But I very much look forward to seeing many of you in person when everybody feels comfortable and happy, and hey, maybe still a while away, but that's when we really have to push. If we're introverted or extroverted, it's a bit more of a push to get out there, and we'll have to all look after each other a lot and make sure that people are happy. But when we all are, I look forward to seeing you all.
Well, thanks again, everybody. And this has been a really great event, and so we are going to wrap things up a little bit early because of being slightly selfish. We have, as Cherise mentioned, we do have the sprint on. So which is going to be really great, and I'm one of the group leaders as well as Cherie, so it'll be good to kind of get back to that as well. But only thing we have to say kind of as we're closing, and I'm going to put the link into the chat here, is for anybody who is interested in our next event, our sign up link has gone live, and we will be doing our next event on the 2nd of December. We're going to extend the runtime slightly because we see how that works. But the idea is that we're going to have a couple of presentations, because we were going to do an event in November, but we're shifted to having some diary issues, so we've shifted it back a week. So we're kind of keeping the 2 presentations in there. Luke's going to be doing a presentation on goal setting and kind of doing that for yourself and kind of looking at that. I'm going to be doing a demo on an introduction to Flow Orchestrator. So I've been having a real good time having a bit of a play around with that. And after that, we'll be having just some time to, like, if people want to stick around, stuff like that, to actually do something that's a bit Christmassy as well, because December is obviously Christmas month. So anything else to add, Luke, before we begin?
No, just a huge thank you to obviously all of our panelists, and then to all of our guests that attended. I think the whole session was themed around making an impact, particularly in the community. I think it's evident that you've all made a big impact in the community, and obviously I hope those that attend have enjoyed it and hope to engage in it as well. So just a big thank you really for all giving up your time, in the same way that we have as of you guys. So thank you very much, and we'll let you get back to your evenings and or mornings and the remainders of your day. But thank you again.
Thanks for organising. Well done.
Thanks for having us.
No problem
Great
at
to
all.
see everyone.
Thanks a lot, guys, and good night.
Thanks.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.